Hello everyone, DonTheCrown here, and the Diablo IV Season 5 patch notes have finally dropped, and they are absolutely insane. There is a ton of stuff to go over in here. However, I don't think that I can go over all of them in a reasonable amount of time, so I've gone through and picked out 10 things that I think are pretty important for you to know. Now, some of these are going to be really kind of obvious, and then other ones are kind of like hidden little patch notes that are kind of hard to find and pick out of this, and I'm really excited for a few of these. And the reason I say that it's kind of hard to break this down is because there are literally so many patch notes. Every single class has gotten changed. Most buffs for most classes, with the exception of Barbarian, who ate a ton of key passive nerfs, but then it did pick up a whole bunch of buffs to some other stuff. Now, on top of that, uniques all have gotten reworked. Every single unique in the game has gotten reworked in a big way. And this isn't just like tweaking some of the numbers around. Some of these have all of the previous affixes on them completely removed and added new stuff in there. Stuff that you could previously only find in tempering are now on some of these uniques, and these are just absolutely nutty. And we're going to do a whole video going over the different uniques, but I would have put together a quick presentation for you to talk about what are 10 things that you need to know about the Season of the Infernal Hordes. So first off is XP buffs. So XP normally in the game right now, you only really benefit from killing monsters that are 10 levels above you. And going anywhere past that 11, 100 doesn't really give you more XP. It just makes it more difficult. So you're pretty much just like in this sweet spot of killing monsters that are 10 levels above us. But they are changing that now, so it's 30 levels. And this will be meaning that you're able to boost up your friends to max level even faster. And also, if your build's strong enough to handle, monsters that are 20 or 30 levels above you, you're going to be leveling up quite a bit faster. And it's just going to mean a faster time into the end game, which I'm pretty excited about. I personally prefer to actually play the end game as opposed to just leveling to 100, which I don't really think is the core part of the game. Let me know what you think about the leveling in the comments below, but I think this is going to be a really good change. Number 2 is profane mind gauge is staying in the game. So this was from last season. It was supposed to be a seasonal only thing for Helltide. And what it does is a little consumable that makes it so that Helltide monster level is 10 levels up, and you get more cinders and more threat gain. And this is staying in the game and getting improved so that now you can stack 3 of them at the same time, making monster levels go up 30. And then I don't know if the cinder and threat gain will also stack, but if they do, Helltide is going to be even crazier this season than it was last season, with just tons of monsters coming out of the threat meter, tons of aberrant cinders, and yeah, it's just going to be a really, really fun time. Just a lot of action going on. Very, very difficult action as well, since they'll be higher level. And I think this is just going to be a good change overall. Helltide was definitely very popular. Profane Mind Cage was really popular, and especially in the PTR, it was really noticeable that this was gone. And so it's nice that not only do they let us keep it, but they improved it at the same time. And this goes together nicely with those XP improvements. Next up, we have legendary drop rate. So now legendaries are going to drop more frequently for monsters that are level 100 or above. Now, this note did specifically call out Helltide, so this might be a Helltide exclusive thing and not a Nightmare Dungeon thing. But this does mean that at like level, I guess, 71 and above, if you're doing Helltide with triple Mind Cage, you're going to be getting even more legendaries than you were before, just allowing yourself to gear up and find cool stuff out in the open world. And I think that getting more people out in the open world is always a good thing. Next up, we have a resource bar. So this is one of these little things that was like kind of hidden in the patch notes, might be hard to find, but you now have an option to add a little resource bar above your head. So you can see your life, you can see your like mana or whatever class mechanic you have. And I just absolutely love this. This is something that was kind of missing from the game. A lot of other ARPGs do have this option. And so for D4 to add this, I think is a very, very good change for the game. This is probably something that you want to turn on in the options, and keep an eye out for a video probably like in the first hour or 2 of the season. And I'll talk about how to set it up. But I'm very excited for this change for sure. Next up, we have tempering improvements. So tempering's kind of been like a hot topic this particular season. A lot of people have been mad because they've been bricking their items and things like that. And so they're improving tempering kind of in 2 ways. One, they've been kind of moving around some of the tempering so that they're more likely to have a 3 or 4 option tempering manual as opposed to like 5. Some of them even have 6. And so they're making some small improvements there. Not everything's been fixed just yet. But on top of that, now for each greater affix or GA that you have on an item, you're going to get +1 tempering attempt. So you can get 6, 7, or 8 tempering attempts, which is almost like double the amount of tempering attempts, which I think is a pretty good change. I would really love to see this go +2 for each GA, and to make sure that those like different rolls, like there's only 3 or 4 options, because it does really get frustrating when you brick an item. But I can kind of understand having to like not necessarily just drop an item. You can perfectly temper it, and then you can perfectly masterwork it over time. Like that's just generally not how crafting works in a lot of other ARPGs. And I'm just glad that there's kind of like a little bit of an item chase all of the time, but it still does hurt so much to fail the tempering on a 2 or 3 GA item. Actually never even did a 3 GA item this season. All the good ones I found I just like sold or just gave away to somebody else because I just didn't want to have to deal with it. Next up, we have fast skill point assignment. This is another one of these little tiny things that I saw in the patch notes, but when you are assigning skill points, I believe you can hold shift and you can click on it and it will apply all of the points that it possibly can. So if you have like built up some skill points where you're leveling, you can just press shift and just bloop, pop them all in for you, as opposed to just clicking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on a skill. You can just knock them all out all at one time. This will especially make respecking a lot easier to do so that you can just assign all of them quickly. And it's just little quality of life things like this that they sneak into the game that I really do love in Diablo 4, because this is something that like would take 10 years maybe in another game. Next up, we have boss HP Nerf. So this is definitely going to be a little bit of a hot topic here, but boss health has been massively reduced across the entire game. So before in World Tier 4, there was a 30,000 times multiplier to boss HP, and now that is getting reduced down to 6,000. That is a big minus. That's absolutely huge minus. And so we're going to see bosses just be a lot easier to deal with. Builds are going to be a little bit more focused probably on clearing or movement speed than they are having to deal with bosses, which I think is maybe a good change. I'd love to see some changes to how the boss mechanics kind of work. Right now, it kind of just feels like bosses are very difficult, and then you stagger them, and then some builds just absolutely annihilate the boss. And I'd love to see some changes along with that instead of like necessarily blanket nerfing, but this will probably make bosses a lot easier to deal with for this particular season. Next up, we have boss ladder altars. So boss ladder is like Duriel and Dariel and the bosses that lead up to them. And one of the most annoying things about farming these guys is having to reset the instance over and over and over again. I had so much living steel this season, I didn't even want to have to deal with it. It was taking me a long stinking time to go and just rotate through all those Grimoires, and they're making some massive improvements. So now when you kill the boss, the altar will just respawn right there, and you'll be able to slap more materials into it. It can be normal, it can be tormented, and you just be able to fight the boss once again, which I think is a great change. This is going to make just grouping up for this type of content a lot better. This is going to make just doing the content period a lot better, a lot smoother, a lot more fun. Next up, tormented boss materials are also getting improved. So previously, Grimoire, there was almost never a reason to do this guy at tormented unless you were trying to farm for a specific unique off of him, because tormented Grimoire would drop the exact same amount of materials for Duriel as the regular one, which makes no sense. And so they fixed that. So now tormented Grimoire and all of the other tormented lesser ladder bosses will drop 5 times the materials, which means you're kind of getting like, it's costing you 3 times the materials to summon, but you're getting 5 times the outcome. You can get even more Duriels or Andariels out of this process. And also on top of that, they're also making it so that Stygian stones are you only require 1 to summon these bosses, as opposed to the 2 before. And then Mythic uniques are now a new thing. So Uber uniques are kind of the things that everybody want to chase, like the Harlequin Crest, Shaco, but now these things are going to be called Mythic uniques. You can see right there. And these have a couple of different changes. One, they are going to be purple in your inventory. When you drop them, there'll be a purple beam, special sound notification. Be a lot easier to tell that you dropped a Mythic unique. You won't accidentally disenchant it or vendor it or something like that. And then on top of that, all of the stats of these have kind of gone from being a cut above to being insanely above. If you just look at Tyrael's Might here for an example, and now ignores durability loss, which is kind of nice, gives you a boatload of movement speed, gives you a ton of maximum resistance, gives you just regular resistance, and gives you damage reduction 20%. And you can get all of these affixes as greater affixes. You can masterwork this thing up. This is going to probably be best in slot for defenses for a lot of builds. Just absolutely just monstrous amount of good stuff here. And I'm very excited to kind of see what you can do with this. Now, on top of that, Mythic Uniques, typically what you wanted to do is just spam farm Duriel or spam farm Andariel. But now you can get Mythic Uniques, I believe, at the same rate from all of the Tormented bosses. So you don't even need to really climb the ladder anymore. We can pretty much just spam Tormented Grigor, since we're going to have a ton of living steel from doing the Hell Tides. And yeah, it's going to give you a lot of loot. And then on top of that, Mythic or Tormented bosses, basically how it used to work is it would roll to see if you dropped a Mythic, yes or no. Now what it does is each of the 5 drops rolls to see if it's going to be Mythic, which means you can get 2 Mythics or 3 Mythics or 4 Mythics or even 5 Mythic drops. I'm sure there's going to be somebody out there posts on Reddit or a Twitch clip that drops 5 Mythic Uniques off of 1 Tormented boss, and maybe it's going to be you. Now, I think this season is going to be absolutely incredible, insane. There's going to be so much craziness going on. All of these uniques have been reworked. Keep an eye out for the unique video. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of them, which ones I think are really good, which ones I think are really bad. But this season 5 is really looking to be like kind of the kickoff, final hurrah for the original vanilla version of Diablo 4 as we go into a lot of big changes for Vessel of Hatred. And I'm very excited to see what Diablo 4 has in store for the future. Hopefully this video helped you out. Let me know if there's anything that you learned here that you didn't catch in other places, and we'll see you again soon. Later.